Ooh, Warriors basketball's back. Almost, Andy. And we got our guy. We got a guy joining us. JD, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Great to be with you guys as always. Our semi-annual little chat here about everything that's going on with the Dubs.
More of a monthly chat.
It's true.
But we'll call it there. Just a reminder for everyone, presented by Prize Picks. Get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 and you use the promo code Welcome to Light Years. Woo. This has been probably the most welcome break from Warriors basketball that I've had in a while. Maybe it's the Jimmy injury and just kind of like everyone catching wind of how fraudulent the front office has been the past half decade. I feel like a dog who finally caught their tail chasing it all day. It's not rewarding. It's not rewarding to have been right on any of this stuff at this point. But season goes on. I'm kind of excited for the second half here, and wanted to pick your brain a few things here, JD. So let's start with this. I thought this was interesting. I mean, look, this is just one person's opinion. Doesn't mean anything, but CBS Sports came out with their front office rankings yesterday.
Oh boy.
And they had the Warriors ranked 17th. I feel like it's been a decade since the Warriors have not been basically top 5 to 10 in every one of these type of rankings, no matter who it is. Look, again, it's just one guy's opinion. This isn't like the one The Athletic did where they're polling other front offices or anything. But that stuck on my mind. It's like the first time I've seen someone kind of like, yeah, they're average-ish at best,
17th. What are we, the Giants? God,
I mean, damn, trending there. We can talk Tony V at the end. I have some take.
Wow.
But I'll switch to the wording. If you dig into the article here, I don't think anything he said was unfair. We can quibble, it should have been 15th or something like that. It doesn't really matter to me, right? Kind of points out that they're a bit like the Heat. They have a really positive rating, but that relies on history that's getting further and further away.
Yeah.
A lot of the reputation stuff is tied to guys who are no longer there. Bob Myers, Jerry West, Travis Schlenk. The signings they've made, even if they haven't had a ton of cap flexibility, have been mostly underwhelming. The Buddy Hields of the world. Obviously, Al Horford's been good, but like nothing particularly illuminating. And then gets into our favorite topic, which is the mismanagement of picks and young players and the 2 timelines fiasco and everything. I guess I want to start with this, JD. Do you think calling the Warriors front office 17, let's just say average, middle of the pack, is appropriate or fair?
I think it is. I'm actually surprised, and you said it. I mean, it's one person's opinion. I'm surprised they're not a little higher. I think they would probably trend toward being a little bit higher, just based on consensus and kind of groupthink over the last maybe decade plus. But I think it's a complete indictment of the last 4 years now, as we remove from 2022 and the championship run, and it all started with the 2 timelines. I think it started with, there are a bunch of different factors involved. It's how they handled Draymond, probably going back to the punch. It's how they handled, the Jordan Poole contract that wound up being so bad within a year that they needed to get off of it. It's the lack of quality development of young players, the inability to turn any of the young players that they drafted into, all-star type players. Hell, even I think even a cut below all-star type player, right? There's kind of an in-between ground that none of the young players have been able to hit. That's like just beneath all-star. And that's, Moses Moody's a fine player. Brandon Podziemski's certainly flawed, but I don't think they're like a cut below all-star. They're like a cut below the cut below all-star. So I think all of that
is Trey Murphy's a cut below all-star.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's an indictment of all of those things. I think, just the hoarding of the draft picks, the belief that they have, there are star players that are attainable that really aren't attainable. Like, I think everybody's kind of catching up the Kuminga fiasco, like the way that all played out over the last 2+ years with regard to him, not being traded 2 years ago and then having his value plummet to a point where you're basically taking a flyer on a good player, but a player that really hasn't been able to be healthy in 2 years. So I think it's all of those things. And it's also, I think people are starting to look at post Steph and thinking, oh, like what are these guys actually going to be able to accomplish post Steph, in addition to the fact that they haven't maximized the last really 4 years now since 22 of having Steph playing at the level that he has.
Yeah, you said it a couple seconds ago. People are catching up. I think Draymond used to say like people catch up a couple years after, right? When I think he was referencing Steph, how great Steph was. I think that was his point. This was a while ago. Like people don't know how Steph is until a couple of years later when they finally realize, oh, he is this good. I don't think people realize how average, I guess, the Warriors front office is until years too late. Like we've been sitting here talking about the mishandling of the Kuminga for 3+ years. People are just realizing it now. And I think that's where this ranking comes in. And let me flip it the other way. I don't know how they can get past this ranking until Steph is gone, where they can make draft picks again that can hopefully prove that they're smart. I just don't think there's a way unless they go and figure out a way to trade for someone. I'm not really confident in that anymore. So he mentions the talent drain, and I think that's another part of it too. That's the obvious one, right? Jerry West, Bob Myers, even Travis Schlenk. I saw Atlanta was in the top 10, I think, in those rankings. If you pull that one up again, I think but he's not there anymore. But he's made a lot of the draft picks and stuff that has now made the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know if they're like a great team, but they've got talent on their okay. The Hawks are 13th, actually. My mistake. So, but still, like even like these teams that are like they've drafted guys and they've taken some of the Warriors guys that maybe the Warriors would have made better picks if they had kept some of these guys on in their front office.
I mean, it's sobering just looking at Sam the teams.
Charlotte,
I mean,
12.
Utah, Charlotte, Memphis, full teardown now for them. Brooklyn. I mean, you look at the teams that are ahead of the Warriors.
Brooklyn's hilarious.
That's a little sobering, honestly.
I mean,
I don't know about that one, but
yeah, I don't either.
I will say this, though. If you look at the last 5 years of talent acquisition, every one of those teams has acquired more talent. And the Warriors are being carried largely by guys who predated the last 5 years, And, the CBA probably factors into it. So they get a little grace for that, just consistently changing the system to make it harder on veteran teams. Probably hurts them, but I don't know, like undoubtedly, like all the goodwill they got for the dynastic years where they looked like they couldn't make a single wrong move and they were light years ahead of everyone. Trademark. They came back down to earth, and, the 3 lotto picks turning into what they did, disappointing. That's kind of where we're at here. I guess my question for you, JD, is where are you at with Dunleavy in this? Because most people, the consensus noise I hear, you either are blaming Joe Lacob or Steve Kerr. Those are like the 2 people, and Mike tends to, not get it the way a normal GM would. What are your impressions of Dunleavy? Is he just a man with his hands tied behind his back? It's culpability here, like somewhere in the middle?
I think it is in the middle. I mean, I think if you look at some of the draft picks that he has made, the second round guys, even Podziemski. Again, Podziemski's not a bad player, but he's never going to be, probably even that cut below all-star type player. He's probably a level below that, which I think becomes a disappointment when you already have these other picks through the years that have been disappointments. So I think, to a certain extent, I think people realize his hands are tied. There's just this collaborative that's been in play for so long in the Warriors front office that I think really benefited them going back to the days of building. But the difference is it was a collaborative of different minds. It was a collaborative of a lot of minds that aren't there anymore. And so you can have this collaborative of some of the name, Jerry West and Travis Schlenk and Larry Riley and Bob Myers. And you can have this collaborative and Joe Lacob and, Kirk or whoever. Like you can have all these guys involved in a room and have their opinions and different things that they value. But if you are coming to a consensus, you're coming to a consensus with some pretty, with a high level group. And so, cooler heads prevail maybe if Jerry West, carries a little bit more weight here or there. And I think that's the thing that to me has changed is it's still a collaborative. It's just a collaborative among a group that is less trusted and I mean less adept at being able to make the right decision. So I think Dunleavy's people skills are also, another thing that's different. And I think it's just a direct. You look at the guy who had the job before him and Bob Myers, and Bob had the ability to manage up. I think like he had the ability to get Joe on the same page with the way maybe something should be done versus, where the players are at in it. But the bottom line is Bob wasn't, this magnificent talent evaluator. So I think like on paper, I think Dunleavy's a better talent evaluator, but to what end? I also think he tends to be more aligned with maybe Steve Kerr, whereas you've got others in the front office who are kind of thinking of things in a different direction. I think the Kuminga thing was pretty telling. I mean, it became really, really clear as time went on that Dunleavy was in complete agreement on Kuminga specifically with Steve Kerr in terms of his skills and ability to fit and willingness, I think, to move. But again, like, does he have the ability to go in and convince Joe Lacob that 2 years ago they should have moved him for somebody that Joe Lacob believes is a role player? Siakam or OG, right? The names that always kind of come up, but it's like you have to be able to sell that value to your manager in essence,
sure.
If they're going to be the one that ultimately has to sign off on it. And I think that has been a skill that maybe he's shown himself not to have.
I do wonder if kind of Lacob getting a lot of egg in his face here kind of brings him down to earth, because everything you said about Bob Myers is true. But ultimately, they did draft Wiseman and Kuminga under Bob Myers. So even with all those great people skills of being able to manage up, he eventually hit a wall, and maybe he liked those players more than we're letting on right now. But like, to me, the story of the Warriors front office is the disease of more, but the disease of more is the owner. The owner is always going to be emboldened and opinionated in any organization, and that's not a bad thing. But when they start crossing the line, when they start asserting too hard, as opposed to just being kind of the person you have to talk to about your decisions, that's kind of when it's a problem. Like, I'm not going to put Joe in Vivek category because that's just unfair. But if this situation happened in Sacramento, what would we all be saying? So he gets, they get a pass on it because they won, and everyone's allowed to make mistakes, even if it's frustrating, what it did to the end of Steph's career here.
I think too, like, if you go way back in time, it wasn't Bob Myers that drafted Draymond Green or Klay Thompson and Steph, right? It's Larry Harris and who's still there, but it's like Jerry West was a big part of that, and part of what made them so great is like they had the perfect like combo of guys that was basically, hey, Jerry West, you kind of go help Travis Schlenk, you guys kind of go help and go scout and draft the right guys and go pine for the right trades. And at the time, Joe Lacob was like, hey, I hired these guys. I'm new to the basketball game. I'm new-ish because he was in Boston before that. But I'm going to go let these guys make the decisions. And then after they won the championships, I think he thought, KD came here because of me. It's like, well, no, I don't think KD.
Yeah, I always think back to like what if.
Yeah.
I always think back to like the Klay Thompson for Kevin Love trade, which felt like it kind of felt insane to not do that trade because Kevin Love was first team All NBA at that point, and Klay was nice. Don't get me wrong, but like Kevin Love had a 30-30 game. He was averaging 26 and 15. He was easy to forget how good he was.
I was all in on Kevin Love.
And it's pretty widely reported like Joe wanted to do that trade because star power, sizzle, and like everyone else, we could see this guy's first team All NBA. This guy's 17 points per game. He's nice, but not that good. It was Jerry West and Steve Kerr who are the voices who are like, no, we're not doing that trade. I wonder if the dynamic was a decade later where GM Joe had, Joe's got his GM hat on. If they pull something like that off, I don't know. These are kind of things I think about with it. I think end of the day, the results are what they are. And, if I was to look at it from like a Warriors fan perspective, you're just kind of like, you're hoping the lessons were learned. You're hoping Joe realizes it's not that fun being front facing, making every decision, because when it blows up, it's not fun to hear what people like Andy and I have to say.
It's not. The other part of it, though, is how far do you have to fall before you make the changes? Because as frustrating as this season has been for a number of reasons, and last year in its own right, before the Jimmy Butler trade, and the year before they go out in the play-in, and as frustrating as these last 4 years have been, if you include this year, it hasn't really come close to rock bottom yet. And often in sports.
We can look up I-80 if you want to see rock bottom.
Well, and that's kind of what I mean. And if you look at other Bay Area examples, you could make the case the Giants haven't actually even hit rock bottom because they've been constantly mid, and so they haven't really been forced to make the drastic decisions that need to be made in terms of like, all right, we're going to change the front. The Niners had to have Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula. Like and win,
they hit like true rock bottom
and win 2 games, and then they figured out a structure. Jed York. It's silly to maybe compare the two, but Jed York got to a point where he was getting destroyed like daily.
No, you're right. Post Harbaugh, like
he was getting
destroyed.
He got rid of Harbaugh. They had the Tom Sula year and the Chip Kelly year. They won 7 games in 2 years. They were 2-14 the Chip Kelly year, and he was getting so sometimes at what point?
That's a great point.
Does an owner look in the mirror
not what I want to hear, but
and say,
yeah, that is true.
because you could look at the Warriors example of that. Like if you want to say it would take Joe, who's had obviously more success than Jed by comparison, is it gonna take Joe like 2 years beyond Steph and then another 2 years to where they are like a 15-win team then for him to be like, okay, I got to hire, whoever the I got to hire Sam Presti in 6 years or whoever that guy is from
give him whatever he wants and promise I'm not going to overrule,
go find the Kyle Shanahan of that time. Right. So it's interesting. Like every franchise kind of has their own rock, and then can they stick to it? Like you look at Sacramento's funny, and I won't spend a bunch of time on them, but like their organization is hilarious because they are right now preaching we're rebuilding, we're tanking, we're all in, we're trying to get a number 1 pick, and at some point in the next year they are going to get extremely impatient with the process that they're trying to fulfill, and they're going to do something really stupid in all likelihood, and it's going to completely negate all of the tanking and the building and the trying to do it the right way. So every organization has to kind of battle that.
They weren't even trying to tank coming into the season, which is another story in itself. Like, come on, man,
it's a fact.
All right. Well, let's get off the ownership stuff. Shout out to the Warriors, as average as it gets. But let's get going on the next part. Before we do that, Light Years Podcast, we are brought to you guys by Prize Picks. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every diamond, every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. I think we can, JD, we're going to ask you here in a little bit. I think we might be able to put Kristaps Prozingis into some of our Prize Picks lineups, into some of those rosters, maybe go with the more on the 3 points makes that he's going to have because he's going to shoot a lot of them. So I think, safely we could put Steph in those. It'd be nice to put him in some of our lineup, maybe both of them. We'll put both of them in starting Thursday night against the Celtics. Prize Picks, best way to win real money this summer. App is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you got to do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win. Download the app today. Use code LIGHTYEARS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LIGHTYEARS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
It is good to be right. Also, it's good to get free money. So really a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Speaking of more gifts from Sam and Andy, new year, same chaos. But what if your pantry could actually make your life easier? Running a home is already enough. You shouldn't have to be an ingredient detective as well. Thrive Market does the vetting for you with over 1,000 restricted ingredients, vetted brands, trusted staples. They make it easy. Guys, you guys know I have a 4-year-old son. You learn pretty quickly. You want to limit the sugar intake on those animals. Otherwise, your life is hell. And so that's really kind of what got me into the habit of being like, all right, what's inside of this snack that he wants? What's inside of this? What can I give him that he'll enjoy eating that isn't going to have him bouncing off of the walls 24/7? And that's what I love about Thrive Market. healthy snacks. You can search by any filter you want: high protein, low sugar, gluten-free, plant-based, whatever your dietary restriction is, or just what you want to do, that sort of thing. And it makes the pantry safe and food becomes fun again, guys. Join Thrive Market with my link, thrivemarket.com/lightyears for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. That's thrivemarket.com/lightyears, 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift. Can't say no to that. Yeah, let's get into it. JD, do you think Kristaps plays this week?
I do. I think it's trending toward him and Steph back for Boston, back for Denver. The Warriors with a nice little opening stretch. They get their game and they get 2 days off, and then tough opponents obviously, but they play the Sunday afternoon game against Denver. So good little test for them. I think they've been kind of gearing up, I feel like, since the trade deadline, with they acquire Porzingis. I think it was kind of silly to think he was going to play before the break. I know that was kind of thrown out there, I think, to maybe appease some an additional freak out of, wait a minute, did you get this guy and he's going to be Andrew Bogut and not play for the rest of the year? I remember they got Bogut and they just didn't.
Honestly, if he ended up with Bogut's impact, that'd be great. But
no question. So I think we're going to get a look. I'm actually surprisingly optimistic, I think, to many on the ability for him to get with Rick Celebrini, and he was already on the mend, and them to create a program that can allow for him to play 27 games to go. If he could play 22 of them, I think that would be considered awesome. And the one thing we know, even this year, going back, if you look at his number, when he plays, he's still productive. It literally is a matter of getting him on the court. And I think he will be productive in real complementary ways to the rest of this Warriors team, even Sam, this team without Jimmy Butler.
Two thoughts. One, it's kind of frustrating because he's the perfect piece, if healthy, to go with Steph and Jimmy. Like, you could really see how that lineup fits perfectly with Melton rounding into form and the pieces they have. So that's going to be a fun what if in my mind. Probably every podcast. The rest of it, no, I'm going to try not to do that. Second one is, so he has POTS, which I'm going to be honest with you, I knew nothing about until his diagnosis was revealed there. It's not something super familiar with. Celebrini is one of the best in the business at managing basketball injuries, soft tissue, guys who've torn something. How do you keep them healthy? That sort of thing. Disease and illness is a different animal. I don't know. Have you heard anything about this and what the Warriors' thoughts on that is? Because to me, that's far more concerning than his litany of lower body injuries, which that's concerning in a different way. But I feel like Celebrini can manage that, even if he's in a smaller role, can keep him healthy. The illness stuff, I just don't know what to do with. Yeah, I think the Warriors were pretty confident in the background that they did, that the Celtics had working with Porzingis figured out a way to manage it, to get him back out on the court. But it's certainly going to be something that has to be monitored constantly, because it is the sort of thing that you don't really know what is going to bring it on in terms of just, running up and down a basketball court for in a 6-minute stretch might bring it on. And so there is, I think, a certain level of unknown, and then how do you kind of calm it down to a point where you can rest, but rest in a manner to where he can get back out there in relatively short order. So I think I don't know a ton about it other than what I've read, but my understanding is that the Celtics, in working with him, had kind of figured it out, and the Hawks had subsequently kind of figured it out to a point where they kind of knew how to get him on the court, for this year. And then, obviously the thing that had kept him out going back to the early part of January was more the leg stuff, like the Achilles stuff.
I wonder if getting him back on the court means that he can one day get back on the court and play real minutes, right? 34 minutes game, or does it mean, because my assumption is tomorrow night Porzingis is going to play like 18 to 20 minutes. Like, does getting him back on the court just mean like, hey, he's just going to play 25 minutes a game for the rest of his career? which is, not necessarily what you want to hear, but it might be good for the Warriors if they want to find a way to re-sign him for the next couple seasons. I have no idea, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
It's kind of like the Andrew Bogut thing, completely different players, but Bogut was at that 22 to 25 minute per game mark the last few years there, because that's just what they determined, given his litany of injuries and everything. Like, we'd rather have him play 23 minutes, 70 games a year than try to play him 30 minutes and see only 27 games be the final answer. So I do wonder if that's kind of where Porzingis' career goes. Like, he turns into a super role player, he's better than a 23 minute per game guy, but that's just kind of all his body has in him. Another obvious one is like Livingston, of course, right?
Yeah.
He was always better than the amount of minutes he got, but he also had like one of the worst injuries of all time. There was kind of an understanding that to be fully healthy, I'm going to be like a seventh or eighth man instead of, a starter, which he was more than talented enough to be.
They really seem to believe that they can keep him on the court enough to make it worth, he's not getting a raise. Like, I think that's the other thing, like the Warriors look at, like, he's making a little under $31 million. And so he's like, it's like an instant, like, it's probably going to be
cut it in half,
probably half, right? No, it
which
really
is,
which is good value, right? If he can get on the court, Andy, that's good value, right? To get
100%.
And so I think that's what they see in trying to bring him in. They look at this skill set that they think really can fit. I hope for their sake that they're not going too far down the road of, all right, get Porzingis in, finish semi-strong. I don't even know what finish semi-strong is. It might be 15-12 or something like that with the crew that they've got. But finish semi-strong, feel good about the ability to retain him. Obviously, the Kuminga deal sets them up, and getting Porzingis back sets them up to be able to more easily keep DeAnthony Melton, which I think is something that they want to do. I just hope they're not going too far down the road of, well, now we got Porzingis and now we kept Melton and Jimmy's coming back.
That's exactly what they're doing. What do you mean they're going? That's exactly what they're. You just nailed the offseason plan.
That's too much hopium. Like, it really is. That would be too. Now you can say, hey, Porzingis can help. Melton coming back's a good thing. Jimmy's going to be, January, February, but there's got to be one more thing. And I know they've hurt their ability to make that move with the way they've kind of structured the remaining salaries now, but they still have the draft picks. And so, I think that's the one thing I would say is don't think, hey, Porzingis and Melton and Jimmy in February means that all of a sudden
don't forget an 18-year-old Kareem Lopez who they're going to take with the 12th pick overall. And Joe's going to get excited and Steve's going to DNP just because he's 18.
So, and look, I don't say that to completely crap on like the belief that, look, they gotta find something to make the remainder of the final 2 months, worth something. Obviously they can't win a title. Obviously their ceiling is probably first round and out. It may be the right match. I don't see anything beyond getting into the first round and a competitive series loss, even if it's against a team like San Antonio, who they seemingly have their number a little bit. But that being said, obviously you have Steph and he can go off and you never know, maybe things get a little bit weird, but at this point, it's just, you can take the positive from if they can keep Porzingis healthy and he can be productive, but they just shouldn't rest on that as if it's the thing that's going to, propel them next year with Jimmy coming back to play, let's say the final 30 games of 27.
I mean, I have 100% confidence they're going to quietly shop Jimmy's contract plus picks. I have like 1% confidence they'll actually pull the trigger on a move unless it's Giannis. They were shopping Jimmy's contract at the deadline, just seeing if they could flip him for a healthier star. I don't care what they said. Like, it's too much noise that they were. And they always say one thing and kind of are quietly doing the other thing. And totally. It's not even a big deal. That's what every front office does, right? It's more of, are they actually going to pull the trigger? Because anyone can say, I'll put in 4 picks in this contract I don't want for Giannis. What are you going to do when he says no? You moving to Siakam? You moving to like one of these guys where it's not the superstar, but undoubtedly he's a better player than what the post ACL version of Jimmy is. I don't know. We got time to discuss it. You mentioned Melton. Maybe Melton is super high on Porzingis because he knows he is the route to him getting the contract he wants to stay on the Warriors. He seems happy here. I will say that.
Come on,
like,
Sam, that's supreme cynical right there. But that I hadn't thought about
nah.
that. Go on.
I mean, he's gonna get a full mid-level exception if he stays healthy the remainder of the season. He's gonna get the same type of contract that like Dante DiVincenzo or Nickeil Alexander-Walker got, where it was like a full mid-level. So it's like, I don't know, 15-ish a year now. And so the Warriors with the Porzingis contract now have the ability to open that up, which they wouldn't have been able to prior. So that's cool because he's a very good player and I'd like to keep him. But anyway, his quote on Porzingis, he's a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams. You see it with the Spurs. You have Wemby, who's 7 a lot. I like that. That's a good way to tell you. 7 foot a lot and stuff he can do. And matchup nightmares he brings to the table. So I think Porzingis being out there is just going to give us a lot of size and a lot of mismatches we need. Some teams he's just going to kill because they can't physically match up with him. I don't just like, it's funny because it's like, it sounds insane to compare him to Wembanyama given how good Wemby is and how we all just are penciling him in for 5 MVPs or something crazy like that. But I'm old enough to remember when Porzingis was drafted and was called the unicorn. And he wasn't as hyped as Wemby, but it was a similar type of like, oh, we haven't seen a 7'3" guy who can shoot it like a true shooter, but also can protect the rim. Obviously Wemby's next level from that. So, but on face value, I don't think the comp is insane. Do you guys?
Go ahead, Andy.
I thought, I mean, I don't know, maybe Melton listens to the podcast because I did bring this up a couple pods. But the funny thing is, I'm a Warriors super fan, but same with Melton, I guess, because he does love stuff. I think he realizes as he's playing in these games without Jimmy, just how hard it is for this team to get open looks, especially in the paint. I've noticed one thing with Melton is like, he's running point guard because they don't have anyone else that can run point, but his handle isn't amazing. And when he tries to get to the hole or tries to drive by someone, like he does turn the ball over a little bit. And I only note that because I think he realizes just how much easier basketball is going to be when Porzingis is on the floor. So bringing up Wemby is pretty funny though. It's pretty funny. That might be the next. Like,
he is to Wembanyama kind of like Peyton Pritchard is to Steph Curry. So
remember
in the same
when
vein,
everyone
a little different.
And when everyone was the next Draymond Green, you remember that? It's funny how they don't mention
Anthony
that anymore,
Bennett.
but yeah, just everyone that was like kind of a tweener, but like couldn't really shoot,
built a little bit like a football player. Yeah, kind of played basketball like a football player. Yeah.
So now everyone's, I guess, is Alex Sarr Wembanyama? Is Risa Shea Wembanyama? Just kind of go down the line, but I don't know. I like the hopium. JD, I like the hopium.
I think the paint aspect of it is interesting to me because you can throw it down to him against a mismatch, and I think he can just go up and score over guys, which is something that has been lacking in a major way since Jimmy went down. Just the ability to get those easier buckets or just get any kind of two. But then the pick and pop game, I think that's where we're going to see it most. I think that we're going to see pick and pop a lot, and he's going to get that open look from 3 and just his ability to knock down the shot from out there. I do think will open up a lot for everybody else. I mean, yeah, Wemby maybe 10 years ago, I could see it.
Sure.
He's pretty slow now in terms of his movements. And has been, I think,
you be slow if you're 8 feet tall and have long arms.
Exactly. You can. No, that absolutely right. So, he can get his shot against anybody, which I think is, I think that's the important, that's the thing. He can get his shot against anybody because he can shoot over them. And, that is something that it is unique, right? Like how many players in the league can just get their shot over anybody because they can just turn and shoot it, or they can spot up and they know that nobody's really going to be able to block it. So I think there is a value in that, and him as a threat, in addition to him as an actual tangible contributor, will open up some things for a team that needs things to be opened up for them, especially now with Jimmy gone. So I'm interested to see how it works with Steph. I think he's going to be great with Steph. I think he'll ease some of the burden on Steph. I mean, that was the big takeaway for me too. The immediate aftermath of Jimmy's injury was just that. And look, I give and have on my shows gave the Warriors credit for continuing to compete and fight post Jimmy. I think they really did it basically all the way up until the deadline, or up until the break rather. But the one thing that was apparent quickly, and it wound up coming to fruition quickly, was that Steph was working way too hard, and it was not going to be sustainable, and he was going to end up missing time, which obviously he did the last couple of weeks before the break. And I think it was if the Warriors hadn't done anything, I think they were setting themselves up for Steph to play about half the games that they have remaining, and this thing to turn into an 8-19 kind of a finish. And then we are maybe talking more about the draft pick. I think Porzingis does give the Warriors some hope that they can take a little burden off of Steph. It can open up some things for other players, and they can find a way to continue to compete here that's not going to burden him to a point where he's going to play half the games, or they're just going to get to a point where they're going to want to shut him down, let's say by the back half of March.
Yeah. Oh,
Hello.
did everyone just leave me?
No.
Oh, okay.
We're here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we'll get to the next piece as well. Light Years Podcast, we are brought to you guys by Wince. Wince, new sponsor. A well-built wardrobe is about pieces that work together and hold up over time. That's what Wince does best. Premium materials, thoughtful design, everyday staples that feel easy to wear and easy to rely on, even as the weather shifts. Wince has the everyday essentials I love with quality that lasts. You got organic cotton sweaters, polos for every occasion, lighter jackets that keep you warm in the changing seasons. The list goes on. Pretty crucial right now with the pouring rain that we've got in the Bay Area. Know how hard it is to find high quality clothing for affordable purposes and prices. So when I found Wince, I had to stock up my wardrobe. My personal favorite, we've got it up right here. If you guys are on the show, we've got the cashmere. That's my favorite. We've got lounge and pajamas also up there. So they've got it all. Everything is built to hold up to daily wear and still looks good season after season. Refresh your wardrobe with Wince. Go to wince.com/lightyears for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada. That's Wince, QUINCE.com/lightyears. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Wince.com/lightyears.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I got a vest from them. I like it. I might put it on, honestly. Only thing stopping me from wearing it right now is it's pouring, so I got to put on a raincoat. Not vest weather. We'll be vest weather very soon. Anyway, guys, I also want to talk about our longest standing sponsor, our friends at Body Spec. You guys want to start your fitness journey. The first thing you got to do is be honest with yourself. And the best way to get honest with yourself is get a DEXA scan. What is a DEXA scan? It's a highly accurate method of measuring your body's composition. So body fat percentage, lean muscle mass, visceral fat, the fat around your organs, the things that tell you what's really going on under the hood of your body. And what our friends at BiSpec have done has made it affordable for all. So with the code LightYears45, you can get DEXA scan for only $45. Guys, these traditionally cost $300, $400, $500. $45 basically free these days. That's like 2 cups of coffee in the Bay Area. So yeah, guys, go to bispec.com, use the code LightYears45, sign up for your DEXA scan. They got mobile vans in LA and the Bay Area. They'll come out to you, they'll scan you, email your results. BiSpec, start your fitness journey. All right. I want to dig back into the Giants thing real quick because I kind of have this. I think you're right.
Oh, brother.
I never thought about it this way, but you're right. Like part of the reason the Niners have probably been the most stable organization since COVID is because they bottomed out in the most disgusting fashion a decade ago in a way that the Warriors and Giants simply haven't. Like the Warriors and Giants apparently just comfortable sitting in the chair, being in the room, but not actually getting any on the action. It's kind of where they're at these days, just don't be last place. Don't be the Kings. Don't operate like the A's or do something like that. And they're happy, that's kind of the way they're at these days. They do have a new manager. And I suspected he was going to be an interesting character. And so far he's been an interesting character here. I haven't asked either of you guys, what did you guys think of his bizarre rant a couple days ago? And then I want to take this back to the Warriors because ultimately they're a Warriors show. What do you think about this hire in context of like when the Warriors hired Steve Kerr, who was also an unorthodox hire?
Ooh.
Wow. It's a stretch, but we're going there.
I like this. I like this. I like talking Giants because they are, even if as mid as they're going to be this season, they are a little more interesting than some of the other teams. I thought
it's spring. It's spring. You're not in the middle of 80 games in and you're 40-40. You can have hope right now.
And they will be 40-40. I guarantee you they will be 40-40.
And if they're 50-30, they'll wind up 60-60.
I actually don't know what to think outside of it doesn't seem like this guy really wants to be a Giants manager. And I don't know. I at this point don't know if I expect him to be a manager for the Giants outside of the 3 years that he's contracted to be a Giants manager. Feels like he's a college coach, which everyone that was, I don't think people panned the hire. I think people were like, ooh, kind of interesting, kind of exciting. Don't know if it'll work. But I do think looking at him, it's like, he's not Gabe Kapler because Gabe Kapler was a complete weirdo. Feels like this guy's like Harbaugh, which Harbaugh only in the fact that Harbaugh can only stay at a spot for like 3-4 years because he's such a like crazy, like rah, burn out the team type of leader. But he is a great leader. So it feels like this is what Vitello is. But that also would imply that the team is going to succeed with him at the helm, but just doesn't feel like he's going to be here for a long time. Just, I don't know. That was first thoughts out of that. Yeah.
I would agree on that. The thing that I keep coming back to and I've tried to not make the Gabe Kapler, Tony Vitello comparisons because I mean, Kapler was as fake as a $3 bill. But the one thing that I underestimated about him, and I've told people this, he was almost a sociopath in terms of like his preparation, not like sure in game, but also preparation with the media and like basically running through, like he was the guy that I'm convinced was standing in front of his mirror in his hotel room. Like Susan's going to ask me this. And then Baggerly's going to ask me this. And then Pavlovich is going to ask me this. And I'm going to have I know the questions and I'm going to have all the answers and it's going to lead back to exactly what the iPad or Farhan in the spreadsheet, says. And I'm going to be covered at every turn, right or wrong. I'm going to be covered and I'm going to know everything that's coming. But do you think
Gabe Kapler did push-ups right before the media session? He strikes me as a guy who made sure to get a lift before the camera was on.
A lift and then a sip of fine whiskey, from what was sitting in the clubhouse. No, so I think the difference is I think he was very fake, but he was very prepared to be fake, if that makes sense. Like he's one of these guys that like he knew there was going to be a ton of scrutiny. And so he wanted to make sure that he wanted to make sure he covered his ass at every turn. I think Vitello is different in the sense that I think Vitello is actually pretty genuine. Like, I don't think Vitello I think Kapler was totally fake. I think Vitello is genuine, but I think the interesting thing about Vitello is, he kind of comes off as this alpha, a lot of bravado, college coach that was the king, at Tennessee. Yeah. And there's this, I think, energy and bravado and I'm going to get into it with the ump and I'm going to light a fire under my players. And I think there's all of that comes with the perception of Tony Vitello, that he's just this alpha, right? That thinks he can do no wrong, that exudes all this confidence. I actually think he's I haven't been around him enough to know yet, but I think he's actually a lot more thoughtful And I think, and I think maybe there's a little bit of an overthink on everything going on in his head, to where, something comes up from Tennessee, he wants to address it as it relates to how he took the job. Is my act that was so great in college going to play in MLB? I think he's consciously, and in some of his press conferences, acknowledged the fact that he kind of understands, because he's smart and not and introspective.
Well, you're in on Tony V.
That it's not going to be. Well, no, I actually think, but there's a thoughtfulness that I actually think screws him in this whole thing, because he's gonna over talk. I think certain situations that don't need to be over talked. And I think when you go down certain paths, it can come off as amateurish. But if you're amateurish without the confidence that you're the king, that you're the alpha, then you're kind of cooked. Because the one thing he had was the fact that he was the alpha, from the Tennessee days. So I think that's the dynamic that I'm, to bring it beneath the surface a little bit. I think that's the dynamic that I'm most keeping an eye on here moving forward.
The thing I saw when that whole scrum exchange went down was one, Giants fans were mostly saying what Andy was saying, which is doesn't sound like he's let go of his ex-girlfriend, for lack of a better way.
Sure.
To put it, That's how it came across. But all the Tennessee people were just like, that's just Tony being Tony. He'll do this another 5. Like, to your point, he goes off the cuff when he shouldn't. Like, it's the opposite of Gabe Kapler. Like, Gabe Kapler would never do that because he's too calculated, right?
Yep.
Or if he did it, it would be calculated specifically. He seemed like he was reacting to someone he saw, or a conversation he had right beforehand, and just had to get it off his chest. And all of us seeing the clip without that context, like, this guy seems like a weirdo who hasn't let go of anything. And I only say that to bring up, you can do that if you have results.
Totally.
He could do whatever the fuck he wanted in Tennessee because he brought them national championships. Steve Kerr does that all the time. When something's on his mind, he says it. But Steve can get away with it because he won 4 rings. Steve wants to go up there and opine on politics. He's allowed to, in a way that like Will Hardy or Doug Christie, coaches who may or may not have a job next year and haven't accomplished anything in their organizations, can't, right? And so that's kind of where I'm curious, because I'm watching this guy. I'm like, look, he's probably the most interesting thing about the Giants right now. And I could see a world in which that intensity actually like lionizes the team and you get the most out of them, whatever the most is, Or I could see Matt Chapman and Willie Adames wanting to fight him by midseason, where it's like the complete opposite, and big leaguers don't like the college rah-rah thing, and it drives them insane because you play way too many games. I don't know which way it's going to go. I can see it going either way, but it is kind of, it makes them more interesting. I'll put it that way right now. Interesting's good until it's interesting in a losing way. Then it's terrible. So.
That is the rule of life, though. You can kind of do anything or say anything you want as long as you win. It's like, that is kind of the rule. It's like the Kuminga stuff, to go back to it. It's like, he could have just asked for however much money he wanted to, and the Warriors would have paid him if he was any fucking good. Like, that's just how it is. Like, there has to be demand, right? There has to be demand.
It's also why, like, the league, I mean, not to pivot it to Kuminga too much, but like, who are you to say I'm losing faith in my coach? Like, it's kind of like, you know what? LeBron says that. We roll our eyes. We're just like, Kawhi says it. We roll our eyes. We're like, I don't know. There's not a lot of guys who can do what he can do. So, you get to be able to get away with certain things when you have a certain status.
I am now selling myself a little more on the Tony V rant, because the problem with the Giants, and I think, you guys are watching all, if not the games, like I am, unfortunately, but it's like their problem is the players are they just got no dog in them from a day-to-day basis. And again, 162 games a lot. So I'm with you there, Sam, but it's like, dude, a lot of these guys, man, day to day, game to game. I think Logan Webb is probably the guy that's like has the most dog.
Yeah, he seems frustrated with the roster.
Yeah, I mean, how much can he get in a trade? How much can he get? But it's like the rest of these guys, man, like Matt Chapman,
more than Duval,
Millie Adames, more than who?
Duval, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Hey, Giants got some good stuff for him. It's like Webb with 3 years on a cost control deal could get some good stuff. But it's just, It's just game to game. The Giants just don't seem like they ever cared that much. Even when they were losing, they went like 5-20 at some point, and the players were just laughing it up.
That is kind of the overarching criticism of Bob Melvin for me, where it's like, I don't know that he was the problem, but he certainly wasn't the solution either. Yeah. You could just see it. They just like, he was just kind of like throw hands in the air. It's like, well, you need to hit the ball. It's like, cool.
And I'll just add to that. I think the Giants front office got themselves in a position where they really, I think, believed that they had and this is dangerous, by the way. They found themselves believing, I think, by the end of the year that they had put together, and I'm talking about Posey and Manassian, like the GM, that they believed that they had put together a much better team than 81 and 81. And basically, I think Bob Melvin got fired because they looked at it and thought, Bob couldn't win 5 more games and get into a wild card. And I think they, when you look at what they didn't do in the offseason, and this was something I go back to September, October, and I said, I hope they're not doing the thing where they say, hey, a more energetic manager, we win 5 more games and we're in the playoffs, and then everybody's kissing our ass. Because, and I think that's where you look at Vitello and the type of hire. Like, are they really thinking Vitello's going to get more from an energy standpoint out of the same roster? Like, that to me is dangerous. If they, and I kind of feel like that's what the
That's
angle
exactly
was.
How they feel. That's exactly how they feel.
No, Vitello on piss and vinegar, and having a go get it attitude is going to get us 5 more wins, and then we're going to get in the playoffs, and we'll tell everybody we're a playoff team, and it's it's all gravy at that point, even if the Dodgers go in 3-peat.
I will throw this in there. I just feel like it's a relevant point. He did hire a good staff, or at least a staff of notable
hope so.
Young up-and-coming coaches from organizations that have a good reputation, like pitching coaches from Tampa, hitting coach from like Toronto or San Diego, stuff like this. Yeah. I don't know that any of that's going to matter, but I do understand the front office perspective, which is they don't feel like the staff last year got the most out of it. So now they're trying to bring in a young, energetic manager, hire the best instructional and development coaches possible. And it's one of those things where it's like, if all this does is lead you to 1 extra win, that's when the, do you trade a Logan Webb? Do you look at like these more extreme measures come in? Because you could convince me, look, they're a 500 team. They needed to win like 4 more games to make the playoffs. You probably need to win 86 games to be a playoff team. They're not far enough off that you could convince yourself the right coaching moves and the right manager and development stuff gets this team there. It doesn't get them close to the World Series, but it gets them there.
Well, let me say this, though. Let's go back to the Warriors, right? How it compares. Because there's a lot of this that is shortcutting. Because remember when the Warriors hired Jama Malalala from Toronto to really like, Slater had it in his piece, actually. That's why the name is in my brain right now. They essentially hired him to develop Kuminga. And like, look, dude, Elliot Ramos
instead he developed Wiggins, which to be fair,
actually brought him a title. So I doubt that the Giants are going to get close to a title with these hires, but I think there's a part of it. It's like, well, why can't you do both, right? Like the Warriors, you bring these guys to go develop the coaching, and you go develop like Terry Stotts and Jerry Stackhouse. I'm sure we're not cheap to bring those guys in. Like those are. Stotts was an ex-head coach, and Jerry Stackhouse is a renowned coach. He
could get a head coaching gig potentially.
Exactly,
soon, front of bench,
right? And so I think with the Giants, I think the thing is like you could be doing both. The Warriors, different story. I mean, they kind of spent as much as they could. The version of them spending is you should have just used the draft picks and make a trade. With the Giants, it's like you could have done all this and you could have just spent, guys. Like you're the fifth. Their version of not trading draft picks. Ironically, Giants don't draft well as well with the Warriors, is that they could have just spent. They could always just spend money. They're 12th. Ironically, they're mediocre in terms of how much they spend. And the Warriors are also mediocre in the way that they spend draft picks. They don't use any of that because they're holding on for the future. So I think that's the comparison where it's like, hey man, you try to do all these little things, but it's like maybe Elliot Ramos just fucking sucks on defense, man. Like no matter how much coaching that you bring in, like maybe Jung-Hoo Lee is just, that's $100 million maybe just threw down the drain. But I'm with you though, where it's like these guys are those guys are young. right? So it's the Luis Arias stuff is maybe more Warriors-esque, where you bring in a guy. It's like, all right, man. You're hoping and praying. You know what I mean? Kristaps Prozingis, you're bringing him, and you're hoping and praying. These guys are just hoping and praying when you.
Andy, you get him with
in.
Ron Washington. You get him with Ron Washington doing some fielding drills. Like,
that's a fucking ridiculous.
I'm kidding. I'm totally full of shit.
Ron Washington.
I'm totally being full of shit.
Moving
1 month, and all of a sudden, I get it. Look, if he had him for 2 years, like, I'm with you, but it's like, come on, guys. Come on, he's probably gonna be traded at.
As
Sam,
we all know,
Sam
you get better. You get better defense.
Sam remembers Marcus Simeon.
Yeah. As we all know, you get better defensively in your 30s, not worse, right? So clearly moving him to a harder defensive position after he was already subpar first base is the move.
Come on.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I'll even give them a pass on the spending stuff, because it seems like the number one goal of the lockout is going to be to just stick it to the Dodgers and Mets. So, not tying yourself to terrible money. Yeah, not tying yourself to terrible money so that you can take advantage of it afterwards is not the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You obviously have to, and they haven't shown that they will. But I don't know. I'm curious. I think he's. I think that here's my thought on Tony V. He's either going to be exactly what they need to like breathe life into him and be like the most beloved man in the Bay Area, or you're going to do every 3-hour show on KNBR of 3 hours of phone calls saying, get rid of this fucking guy. I hate him. There's zero chance this is a middle ground guy. Zero chance.
Which is good for the Giants, which I think is good, right? We just talked about coming into the show. You either go, Jed York, 2 wins. What's a 2-win version for the Giants? 65 wins, 70 wins, 65 wins.
I think his only chance, honestly, and I wasn't a fan of the hire personally, but I think his only chance is if they're successful this year, and maybe it's just their year, right? To win 88 or 90, maybe some things break their way. They get some career years. The pitching holds up. They figure out the bullpen. They win 88 to 90. And then, I mean, none of those things in a what should happen in a logical thought, like they should be 81 to 83, 78 to 83. Like, that's logic if you look at everything. But I think, maybe every year there is a team that is a little bit of an outlier. Maybe they're one of those teams this year. I think he needs that, though, to be sustainable for multiple years. I think if it goes bad this year, I think he's probably cooked. But I also
going to LSU, baby, or whatever.
I also was really surprised, to kind of wrap up the whole weird presser and him talking about tennis. I was actually really surprised at how pissed off everybody got so quickly about that, because
Giants fans are mad about everything right now.
That's true. No, they are. But I was really surprised, because I thought, I don't know. I was just surprised that it was bubbling beneath the surface with him, because I feel like he's kind of been a darling to this point in terms of,
I've heard way too much about Liam Doyle. I'll just put it that way.
Totally,
I didn't even know who he was. Every press conference he's referencing Tennessee players. I know the Tennessee roster way too well.
I was just stunned how Monday was like a turning point, and I'd noticed the same things, but Monday I was like, holy shit, like Giants fans are like, are they already turning? And even some in the media that had like kissed his ass and acted like he was, it's like, oh, now it's too much, Tennessee or whatever. Like you thought that this was like the greatest hire ever. So it just, there's a lot of people that I think were, I don't know, maybe panic stricken in their original take.
Isn't it kind of like how Warrior fans kill Pajemski? And it's like, to be fair, he's punched above his weight for a 19th overall pick, but a lot of the shit he gets is, it's like the 8th draft pick in a row who thinks way too highly of himself, who isn't all that. And like a lot of the just visceral hate he gets is like hate that was built up from Wiseman, from Kuminga, from all these other things. That's kind of how the Tony V thing feels to me, where it's kind of like,
I like that.
He's just kind of like, the patience is very thin with the specific fan base on these like out of the box moves
You
instead of just making it in the box move. Yeah, exactly.
You went and got this guy and told me that he's the greatest hire ever. It better freaking work. And if anything's weird about it, we're out. Yeah, I get that.
Because you know who would get grace for doing stuff like that? Like Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani. They get Ohtani and he just wants to talk about the Angels all the time. I don't think anyone gives a fuck. It's just like, we got him in our jersey. We're good. But this guy, it's like trying to, be the smartest man in the room or come up with like the out of the box hire that gets all like the glowing, think pieces in 6 months. No patience for it.
Prickly time to be a Bay Area sports fan. I mean, we just did a 15 minutes on the Giants and Warriors, and I think the Niners probably have it. Yeah, the Niners probably have it just as prickly, where it's like they just watched the Seahawks win the freaking Super Bowl on their field. So, yeah, Bay Area sports fans, they have got it. At least your A's, Sam, have a bunch of young hitters that are really freaking good. So maybe
I can't claim them until Fisher sells. It genuinely pisses me off how they have like super team of young hitters. Like they have like a core that I think most teams would die for with like Kurtz and Wilson and like, and it's like they're playing in Sacramento trying to get to Vegas, which will never happen. The whole thing just disgusts me.
Yeah,
but they are good. The players themselves are good. There's no denying. Imagine
loaded, man. It's this generation's Tejada and Chavez and Giambi, man. Like they got dudes.
We'll see if Kurtz repeats it, but that was a ridiculous rookie year. That's all I'm gonna say.
If the Giants had that core, the marketing would be off the charts.
If they had that core, no one would even put a microphone in front of Tony V's. No one would care about the Tennessee thing. You'd just be seeing, can Kurtz hit 73? Maybe, that sort of thing.
Yeah. By the way, the peak Giants hopium is when Kurtz and his name is invoked with Bryce Eldridge.
I knew this was coming.
Like, holy shit, have I heard a lot of that from again?
Bro, that's so unfair because
the Kurtz Eldridge comps. I'm like, that was like one of the greatest seasons ever for somebody. Yeah, like.
He went 6 for 6 with 4 home runs and a double that should have been a home run in any other ballpark. It's ridiculous. He could be an all-star first baseman, Bryce Eldridge, and the gap between the two could still be significant.
Yeah, I just it's like let's slow our roll on that. Watching the year that Kurtz had, like because he could be very good and still, like to your point, he could be very good and still not be that. I think the Giants are going to be dictated by the young players. Because I think the roster that they have is kind of mid. So I think, Andy, the hope is that if they are actually having a good year, July, August, September, it's going to be because there was an infusion of young players that actually came up and were really good for the first time in a long time. And Eldridge, I think, would be at the forefront of that. I think if we look back, that's what it's going to wind up looking like, even though we don't. And that's the fundamental difference. I never expect the leap. Moody, Pajemski, Kuminga, never expect the leap. It just has to happen naturally.
Betting against it the math tends to work out in your favor if you bet against it, just in general, So I was going to say, I guess that's the fundamental.
The Giants are expecting leaps just like the Warriors did coming into the season.
Yes.
I think that's another good way to put it. Where it's
and Tony V's a +5 over Melvin, who was, asleep at the wheel at the end.
He might be.
Or
-5, maybe a -5 too.
Just quit talking about Tennessee. Just quit talking about
He's either going to make Bryce Eldridge a star or Matt Chapman's going to punch him in the face. One or the other. Maybe both. I don't know.
I'm taking both. I'm good with both.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of who on the Giants is like the most fiery that would confront him if they hated him. And I think it's probably Chapman.
You know what else is interesting about that is like, I think your veteran players truly dictate whether somebody like Vitello can survive, because I think like you say that about, Chapman, but you know what? Chapman is like, yeah, he is, head down, quiet, kind of grinder type. But you know what? He in his own way is kind of like, yeah, I'm a pro. I got paid. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to be a good teammate. I'm like ignoring who the manager is. Like, I don't think
life's good.
Life is good. And I think Adames to a certain extent is like an opposite personality to somebody like Chapman. But it's like, if you have professionals, I don't know that they necessarily impact the manager that much, but what impacts it is when you're 78, on pace to be a 78 win team again. And Logan Webb's the guy that I would honestly be looking at.
Harrison Bader is on the guy too, but yes,
and
Webb.
Harrison Bader has a history of that in other places. There's a reason he's on a different team every year, and it's not because he's unproductive. But anyway,
I think that's the one.
You guys can cut this last 20 minutes out. It's all good.
I like it.
Nah, look, only the sickos are getting 50 minutes into the pod, and those who are there, they're happy to hear. Andy,
they want Andy's Giants takes. Let's go.
Why not, dude? What else we got going on today?
It's more depressing every year.
All right, JD, appreciate you. You've been really kind with your time.
Thanks,
See you guys later soon.
Thank you.